recording, just let me know and I will do so if there's something in the conversation that you want to share that you do not want shared out on video. Okay, so welcome. Today is November 5th, 2020. Thank you for changing your Zoom name to represent your first and last name. So just as I start every session with a quote, we are not a team because we work together. We are a team because we respect, trust, and care for each other. And there's really no way to get through these times unless you have a team of people around you that are supporting you and that you are supporting to collaborate in pushing through all of these challenges that we have facing us in education at this moment. And not just at our jobs, but in society in general, and many people personally as well. So just a reminder, if you're not a part of the Google Classroom, here is the code. You can take a minute to jot that down so that you can join us. All of the resources that we have in this slideshow, you can gather through the slideshow presentation, which will be shared on the Western Suffolk BOCES Toolkit. It will also be shared in the Google Classroom, and all of the resources are there for you as well. So as usual, we're going to go over our essential agreements, just taking a look at the agreements that we agreed to at the beginning of the year when we got this started back in March, which seems like many moons ago. So being respectful of all voices and listening with an open mind, being respectful of collaborative decision making, reflect on what may happen and adjust after implementation, be flexible and proactive, be authentic in your reflection, be honest with what is not working, be sure to stick to your plan with fidelity, listen to understand rather than listen to respond, use of Socratic circle to share ideas, and expect to get out of it what you put into it. So just a couple of resources to go through here that Corinne and I have provided for you. The first, when you click on here, is an FAQ sheet from New York State that was just released on October 30th of 2020. So it went out to everybody. It helps you with reopening guidance, recovering guidance, rebuilding guidance for your ELL students. So anything that you have any questions about with testing for ELL students is all in here. There are quite a few links, as you can see. There are instruction units of study. This is posted in your Google Classroom, as I said. So if you have any questions about this, there's also an email for a person at the bottom of this from the state that you can contact if you have any questions. Next, we have our bridge documents, which were created and at the beginning of this school year for ELA and math for each of our grade levels, starting from pre-K up to grade 12. And so when you take a look here, really what these guidance documents are is it's a way for your teachers to track what has been hit in their classrooms, whether it be remote or hybrid or in person. So keeping track, and as I'm trying to open one here for you to show you, but it doesn't want to open. So as you take a look at these, thinking about how you could utilize these for the 21-22 school year, how you can make sure that you're utilizing these with all of your grade levels to fill those gaps to see what was missing. As we were just talking in our social studies group, there's quite a bit of concern about not getting to all of the standards and the content for certain grade levels. So it's important to know what we've missed so that we can fill in those gaps and reflect on what we need to do in order to fill those gaps. The other two tools here are from Danielson. I've been posting her framework for remote teaching. This is an observation tool that is a companion to the framework for remote teaching that she had released earlier in the year, and then a self-assessment and reflection for your teachers on how it's going with remote teaching. So I think that that's a valuable resource to look at because it allows us to see the shift between what remote teaching looks like and what in-person teaching looks like and what our best practices for both of those. And then we have some more free resources from New York State. And so they had teamed up with the New York State United Teachers Union in order to provide some webinars for teachers about balancing it all with in-person and hybrid and blended and remote learning, all of these things that we are juggling. So when you come into this, you will get the video. This is the first recording. It's a little over an hour. It's about an hour and 5 minutes. And then there's also future webinar sessions that you or your teachers can sign up for. And again, there's an email here. If you have any questions, you can contact the state. I left these in here. I know that it's a tricky time right now, but school climate is key in making sure that we are successful. So there are 2 Google Forms here, one for staff and one for teachers. If you're interested in having these be shared with you for your school district, just let me know. What I did was I took the Panorama survey questions that were PDF documents. I knew nobody was going to want to sit there and fill out pencil and paper forms, so I converted them to a Google form for you. Lots of information about how your staff is feeling about the building, how teachers are feeling about administrative support, what staff and teachers think about students and how students are being taught and being perceived. So if you're interested in that, you can just drop me an email and I will get those to you. You can take a look at them in the Google Classroom as well. We have our ELA coordinator meetings coming up. We had our first one just last week. So they are 8:30 to 11:30 on January 28th and April 29th. I have Samantha Black from Farmingdale and Sarah Cordova from Literacy Matters coming in, and we have been doing some work around the culturally responsive sustaining framework from New York State. So we will be continuing that work. Don't worry if you missed the first meeting. You can come in and join us on the 28th and April 29th and be a part of those as well. And that is pretty much my spiel. The Western Suffolk BOCES Toolkit is a place where everything is housed. Any emails that you've been getting about all of the workshops that are coming through, everything that you are getting bombarded with that you can't deal with on a daily basis is all housed in the Western Suffolk BOCES Toolkit for you to take a look at your leisure. So there's articles, there's free webinars from outside providers, there's all of the upcoming webinars that we're having and PD sessions that we're offering are on there, as well as parent resources, culturally responsive resources. It's quite a wide array of materials at your disposal. And of course, if you have time, I know it's very challenging to find a couple of minutes, but we have some voice and choice from you. If you can fill out that quick Google form. It's a survey just to let us know what you need from us going forward. Okay, so there's my spiel. Welcome. I see we've had some more people join in. Just a reminder that we are recording. So if there is anything that you want to share that you do not want recorded, please just let me know and I will stop recording. So nice to see some more friendly faces out there. So now this is your time. Corinne and I turn it over to you to chat with one another. We know that you don't have a lot of time to do that. So we offer this as a platform for you to share what's going really well in your districts or throw out questions that you have about things that are happening within education right now and see if the group can help you out with it. So just open up your mic at any time and you can begin your conversation.
So I just have a general question or thought. I'm Jenny Hoffman. I'm the Director of Humanities. So I feel like conversations between English and social studies are very different than some of the conversations I've heard with math and science. So I feel like ELA, like I don't hear teachers saying like I'm not going to get to all the standards or I don't know, like pacing wise, like our pacing hasn't changed that much. I mean, the beginning of the year was like a slow start and that kind of idea, but and kids are lower performance wise than we thought that was expected, But as far as like not getting to all of the curriculum, I'm just curious if you've heard any feedback from any kind of ELA from K-12 that they wouldn't get to all the standards. And then I'm also curious, I know this is only ELA, but if anybody else is involved with social studies, because that is content driven and sequential, right? Do you have any feedback like that your teachers are saying, we're not sure if we're going to get to everything?
I see Ryan and I'm like, is she reaching for her mute button or because she was just in the social studies meeting with us?
Yeah. Yeah. Hey, Jenny, how are you? Yes, absolutely. Social studies, we're starting to have those conversations at the elementary level that we might not reach all of the content areas, but because it is cyclical, really focusing on the skills and strategies when it does come to social studies, like focusing on more of like, analyzing the documents as opposed to, the actual content, since we will circulate around it. However, with ELA, there definitely, I'm starting to hear conversations that we might not be able to reach all of the curriculum that we set out to reach. We are in my district implementing a new reading curriculum, so we are taking it a little bit slowly and only doing 3 units. So I do think that that's doable. We are doing 3 units for writing as well. The stress, I think, is coming more from the primary with regards to foundations, especially at the grade 1 level. Level 1, nobody can really get level 1 done in a year anyway. I don't know why they designed 42 weeks of instruction to get done in 1 school year. But I think a lot of the stress that we're having is coming from foundations. But something that has taken a little stress off the plate of the primary teachers is FunHub, which I know everybody's pretty much using. If, we're really trying to make sure that the teachers register their teacher manual with it, because yes, they are accessing the interactivities, but, we want to make sure that they have the teacher manual too. But there's definitely a big stress. I would say the biggest stress for ELA right now at the elementary level is coming from foundations more than anything else. And I don't know what Foundations hasn't really put out any guidance in terms of, altering their curriculum. So I don't know if anybody else is having those conversations or feeling that pressure. I mean, obviously there's so much pressure to get the fluency and decoding down at the primary level before they move on. So I don't know if anybody else is having those conversations or looking at altering the curriculum, et cetera.
Hi, everybody. I'm Lisa DiRienzo. I'm Half Hollow Hills Elementary ELA Coordinator, and I agree, Ryan, Foundations is one of the areas that I think they're most concerned about on the primary level. I know in first grade in particular, they have the beginning unit is like a review of kindergarten, and that's the piece that ended up taking more time because the kids lost 4 months of the real essential end of kindergarten foundations lessons. So that's the piece that has taken more time. And we're just trying to slog through it in all reality, and with anticipation of possibly for next year rolling over some of the first grade lessons or ideas into our second grade. And we typically don't use foundations in second grade, but that is something that we're considering for next year. In addition, we're responding to a lot of concerns by teachers in how low students are on each grade level, and going by, what we typically expect from a typical summer slide, and at least doubling that, if not tripling that for some of our students. So we've actually made adaptations to our report card so that we're not, because we don't want to, concern parents too much when we have any grading that's reflected on what their independent or instructional reading levels are on each grade level, and then pushing for asks of AIS services, which we are tapped out at the moment in terms of our students. So that's the other piece, is how are we supporting AIS and really looking at like a few years of catch up for this. So that's kind of like, that's on our radar. The other piece that I know some teachers are having difficulty with is writing. So getting through all the pieces of writing and the writing units. They're not so concerned about the reading units of study, but the writing units of study are one piece, because it's so tangible what they're able to get through, and just the low nature of students being able to, the limited amount of time they had a pencil or a pen in their hand, just getting that started at the beginning of the year took a lot longer than normal. But the one question that I am wondering, like, we have about 800 students in our district on the elementary level only that are fully remote. And what I'm looking for especially our special education students, we have some self-contained students that are full remote, but also for our struggling students, we're trying to service their needs and get them off the computers. Does anybody know any kind of relatively, financially responsible book sets that I've been researching different ones, but I'm not finding certain ones that really fit the bill? Does anybody know of some books that we can send home? I'm really looking for lower level book sets where we can send home and possibly, cycle through different pickups throughout the next trimester for our low reading students that are remote. Is anybody using anything?
You mean ebooks, because for the virtual students?
No, I want to get them off the computer, because what we're finding is when we have a ton of technological resources, but they really need their fingers on the text and to be able to manipulate the text. So real books, simple ones that, I could go on Scholastic and various other things, but a lot of times these are like bigger sets. They're not quite what we need, and they're a little expensive.
I don't know if your public library is supporting it, but I do know that my public library is actually putting together what's called book bundles for the virtual kids, where, yes, granted, they might not be leveled, but they pretty much take the interest into account, and they'll bundle as many as 8 to 10 books.
Okay.
For the kids, like at a time, and like literally meet them on the street. So it's like drive through to get the books, and it's free.
Okay,
So,
that's a great idea.
I don't know if your public library is doing that, but I do know a bunch of public libraries are doing that to help support the virtual learners.
Our public library has been really supportive. When you said, like, based on interest, you were able to actually, like, if I reach out to parents and I'm getting interests, and they were able to put something together that was that specific?
So my public library, two ways we're doing it. If the teachers are picking it, I set up a Google sheet that I share with all the teachers as well as the public library, so that if they do want some titles, and even if they want multiple copies of the titles, they'll just fill it out on the Google sheet, and the public library will be able to give them access through either Hoopla or Libby. But then in terms of the book bundles, the teachers can actually reach out to the library, although what I'm finding is that mostly it's the parents that are reaching out to the public library and saying, like, this is the interest of my child or what have you. And like I said, they'll bunch up as many as 10 to 15 books to put together and just go home with the children.
Okay, great. Thank you.
And it's free. I'm just kind of curious too, because Lisa, you brought this up as well, AIS services at the elementary level. I could throw out probably like 10 or 15 topics on this. Lisa, you had mentioned, like, it's pretty much like tapped out or what have you. I'm just kind of curious as to how AIS has been, set up for virtual in this climate for the elementary kids in terms of tier.
Well, for our in-person students, we've had to reduce the amount of sessions because we pulled some of our reading specialists to become remote teachers for the grade levels. So I have 5 fewer reading specialists who are working in the schools because they're each teaching 5 sections of a certain grade level of ELA. So it reduced my staff. So in school, we went down to 2 or 3 sessions a week for each group, but that were reduced in size because of social distancing as well. So that in and of itself reduced the amount of students that we could see. I'm in the process of putting together a proposal for some kind of, I don't even want to call it AIS, but support services for our remote students. Our remote students get 40 minutes of ELA with an ELA teacher. They also get another 40 minutes of small group reading instruction, which is really like smaller group, that's half the class, where that is supported by a reading teacher doing more like collegial circle, kind of book club kind of work, extensions of the of some book study. But I'm looking at the idea of supporting AIS services with an 8-week cycle of 4 to 6 students in a group being seen once or twice a week remotely for a more specific kind of guided reading. So that's what we're trying to do right now. But it's, you know, we have so many students, and in particular, we have 49 students who are reading on a level A in first grade in the remote group. So it's a huge number. What's everyone else doing?
We actually took all of our intervention teachers at the elementary level, and they all have classes, like every one of them. So we have no intervention teachers. So we're struggling with this. The question is, do we, so our virtual teachers are actually teaching less time overall because they don't have like arrival, dismissal, like kids moving around the building. So one of our ideas was that we have 15 virtual teachers for our 100% remote kids, that they would do intervention for the whole like all our 5 elementary schools. So they'd be working with other kids, you know, that they wouldn't have during the day. That idea hasn't gone over well so far, but the other idea is that all classroom teachers would be responsible for tier 1, 2, and 3. Like they'd have to keep, you know, they would just have to keep data. And we used to have an intervention period that there was no new instruction, that was only for intervention. And we don't really have that this year. We'd have to like put it back in place so that the classroom teachers would have the time to do that. So kind of circling back to what Ryan was saying about foundations, we have extra time in our schedule right now because we don't have that intervention period. So I feel like it's going to be a big shift if we do that, to like go back to the idea like you're going to lose a period a day because you should be doing some intervention. And not that teachers aren't doing intervention daily, right, and by every minute, but the idea of like writing it all down and, you know, keeping all the data with the idea that it's going to go to CST, or, you know what I mean, go to some kind of meeting, like that hasn't really been consistent. So we are struggling as well.
Hicksville has a group of reading teachers for the 7 elementary schools of about 14 or 16, and now we're down to 1. All of the reading teachers, and we were using the LLI program, all of the elementary school teachers have been assigned classroom duties. So we only have 1 reading teacher left in the district. So there is no formal intervention program in Hicksville at this time. Even our librarians, because they had to use the library for classroom space, even our librarians are on the move and not doing what they traditionally do in terms of providing services for students and instruction. If I could share with you a new collaboration that I put together with the Hicksville Public Library, and you may want to pursue this. Right now, since our library has been closed, and you may have gotten an email from me as to what's happening with your libraries, how are you distributing books, and so on. The decision was made that we're not ready to distribute books from our own libraries, and we have a library in every elementary school. So I began to take a look at what some of the other options are, and with the Hicksville Public Library, we are electronically giving every student a library card in the elementary school. It seems like, and I was surprised how seamless it is, we provide some elements for our database that are private protected, because you can't just release that fall within, I forget the regulation. And between our tech department and their tech department, they're going to be giving students library cards to enable them to access their ebook collection, and doing it electronically using our student ID numbers as the basis for the numbers that will go on the library card. So they're making that connection. And the students then will have access to not only the Hicksville inventory of ebooks, but also the entire Nassau library digital doorway, as it's called, to those as well. And of course, we're going to bring in the teachers and our own librarians and the parents to let them know this. And this process isn't going to even require parental approval, because that would delay it. It's seamless. If anybody's taken a book out electronically from the public library, which I have through Libby, if you don't finish it in 2 weeks, for example, they'll take it back from you. So there's not this issue of overdue books. It doesn't replace hands-on books, and I like that idea of the library bundling books. And it's something I will take up with my Hicksville library, because they're very anxious to create this collaboration with the school district. So I wanted to just pass that along to you. That may be avenue that you may want to take. To purchase books from Sora is very expensive. They have a variety of different packages, and you have to know what you're doing when you're doing that, and identify what meets your needs, and then have the budget for it. The other area that I just wanted to share with you is that I just did an informal survey in terms of pacing of the curriculum at the middle school and the high school, not the elementary school. And there are some teachers who feel they're on pace now after the bumps on the road that we experienced at the beginning of the year. But the majority of teachers have recognized that they're not going to cover the English curriculum in the middle school and the high school the way they have in previous years, although they won't be too far off. And now that we're into 6 or 7 weeks of instruction, they seem to be pretty comfortable with the routines and so on of remote instruction. But my mantra has been, maybe at this time it's a good opportunity to cover depth rather than breadth, particularly in the middle school and the high school. When you talk about social studies, you talk about the sciences and math, their curriculum is basically linear. From what I've heard, Nassau BOCES is saying, you have to teach to the region in science and in math and get those units covered. In ELA, in English, we have a lot more flexibility to do that. It's not like you have to get through American history in a year and you have to get through the other units, whether it's economics or whatever it is, and then you're going to get a region for it. So there's more accountability for that. So that's just just wanted to share that with you in terms of what's happening in Hicksville.
One other piece that I just wanted to share too that we're using, I don't know if anybody else is using, has anybody using Literably?
It's funny you should bring that up. We were just considering, we got a sales pitch from them and trying to, look at the cost benefit analysis. So I'm curious to hear, Lisa, your experience.
I mean, so far the experience has been fantastic. It's not a cheap piece, but we actually, I ran a cost analysis between in our district for our in-person learners. We typically provide teachers with at least 1 day of sub coverage each trimester to assist them in doing their running records for their whole class and their benchmark assessments. When we ran the cost of all those subs, Literably was by far a better choice. So what we did was, we're piloting it this year for our remote only. We're not using it for our in-person students yet. So we are piloting it for our remote only students. So far, the company has been very responsive for any time we've had any issues. And they are actively working with us to help develop the program to fit our needs. The feedback from teachers has been very good so far. We've had a few little hiccups with certain things, but it's specifically when it comes to students' Wi-Fi ability within their own homes. So that has provided some hiccups in terms of students really getting a good assessment done. But for the most part, it has been going very well. The dashboard has been very effective. We're able to share it and group kids accordingly. It gives us some pretty good results, specifically to do with their comprehension abilities. So that gives teachers some good feedback. And I will say that the program even highlighted a few questionable recordings where, we are often worried about, we're the first line of defense sometimes for some students, depending on what's going on at home when we see them every day. And their teachers that were doing the assessments highlighted some areas of concern for students' home life. So it was able to help us track some of that too, which was very helpful in the end. But overall, the results have been pretty good. We've done one whole benchmark run through, and then we'll have another one in a few months.
What is the name of that program?
It's called Literably. They're based out of California and developed by teachers, and the assessments are done, for the most part, they're scored by teachers as well, rather than a computer scoring them. So they give very detailed running record, from a miscue analysis to the comprehension score to the rate and the accuracy.
I found their introduction pretty compelling, especially the fact that they have multiple books at each level as opposed to just, you know, the one that you would get if you were doing it F&P. Lisa, my question for you, and this is my concern, we thought about doing it with our remote students only, and then quickly realized that there may be a discrepancy based on how well teachers are trained in doing running records between the scores that we were getting for the remote students, which would theoretically be a little more normed, and the scores that we were seeing for the cohort who was in school. Have you seen that discrepancy emerge when you're doing it this way?
What's interesting is some of our remote students, they're all being taught by our reading specialists. So they're taking a very hard look at these running records, and they're not seeing the discrepancy so much. And they are able to physically kind of control what assessment or what level or what story they want the students to read. So that's been good. The other positive for us is we use Infinite Campus, and so it was able to connect with Infinite Campus. So when we had data like running record scores from last February, which was our last input, they were able to correlate that from Infinite Campus, and then Literably was able to set where the students should start based on the last time they were assessed. So they've been pretty good so far, I'd say, for the most part.
Okay, for those of you that joined us just a little bit later on throughout the meeting, this is your time to throw questions out to the group, share anything that's going really well with your school that you think would be beneficial to others. But really, any concerns or questions that you have, you can utilize this time to speak to other literacy professionals.
A number of our teachers have expressed concern or worry about how to work in small group instruction along with the parameters for COVID. How have you found creative ways around that in your district?
I think the silence answered the question, Michelle. It's the same question that we're having here, and the bigger concern's been like with book clubs now. So I've been trying, I'm curious if any of you have had experience with breakout rooms. We kind of threw that out there, and teachers were uncomfortable with the idea of having students in breakout rooms without direct supervision. So we floated that idea, but that didn't go very far.
We are using breakout rooms in the classroom on devices to do book clubs, and even using it in, if it was just the chat, we kind of, one way that some of my teachers are working on either book clubs or guided reading is kind of looking at it like a tweet chat, where you pose a question and everyone has to respond in the chat to on their ideas and build on what each other is saying. We're also looking at ways to physically kind of place students in the class. So if they are in one line of desks, that, you know, they have them just turn to one direction and kind of work in that sense, but it is very difficult.
Yeah, to complicate matters, our elementary students are not one-to-one devices.
Yeah, at the high school level, we've been using breakout rooms a lot. I find it's the closest thing to approximate what we did, but it certainly has some limitations. We've done breakout rooms with kids. We have the hybrid model where kids are in school and kids are at home and every other day. And so most of the groups have some students in class and some students out of class, so it allows that kind of a conversation amongst both groups. But it does it is challenging sometimes to hear one another on there, that there's an echo on there, or, you know, and as an observer, if I'm coming in, sometimes it's hard to get a feel for all the conversation happening in the room. So it's certainly not perfect, but it at least allows us to facilitate conversations in the room and for students to engage with one another.
Yeah, I wanted to add that at the high school here in Lawrence, that some teachers use the extension for the Google breakout rooms. And when teachers use individual extensions, sometimes it bogs down the whole system and it causes lagging and delays, but we just purchased it. So it'll be part of the console. And the teachers that are using it say it's a game changer. They love it. And it is the closest thing to having that group work and allowing the students at home to communicate with the students at school.
Kathleen, you just purchased the extension it's a higher cost than the standard breakout rooms that come with the Google platform. So did you just purchase the extension for additional money?
I don't know about the costs. I just know that the teachers that were using it, it wasn't part of the console. And so it was purchased. So it'll be in our waffle, like it'll be part of, you know, docs and sheets.
Right, part of their tool.
The meet and everything. Yeah. So, and our tech guy said that the extensions, even the grid, really cause problems in the whole system. And we're going to discourage people from using those extensions and just use what's part of the console.
Yeah, I've been told when we're talking about breakout rooms and that the Zoom breakout rooms are much more effective. They work a little more seamlessly, and they're more teacher friendly in terms of migrating from room to room.
Yeah, the extension that was available for Google, the free extension, was a challenge across the board because you had to have multiple meet links open at one time. It's not like Zoom where you're in one meeting and it populates out. However, from what I understand about the new platform that comes with G Suites is that it is quite costly. And that has been the deterrent. I mean, I'm talking about, you know, tens of thousands of dollars towards the upper end. So I can understand why school districts are in a bind and not able to purchase that at this time.
So Jessica, I'll just echo, we looked into upgrading our Google, whatever, I think it's like the Google Education Enterprise, whatever the next level is. And it was more cost effective actually for us to contract with Zoom, which is what we're now doing. So we're, you know, there's going to be this complication of retraining teachers who have been accustomed to using their Google Classroom links, but we wanted it for two reasons. First was the breakout rooms, and the second thing is with conferences, with parent-teacher conferences coming up, we really needed to have a platform that had a waiting room. And I believe the enterprise education, whatever it is, has waiting rooms, but again, cost-wise, we wanted to transition to Zoom so that we could do that for conferences. So I don't know exactly what the price broke down to, but it was less expensive than upgrading our Google subscriptions.
Okay, any other questions to throw out to the group? Bryce, I know that in our coordinators meeting last week, you had some questions about assessments. We have a little bit more of a different group here. So I don't know if you want to throw that out there. Maybe somebody has something.
Sure, I actually have, so I have two things. I'll do the assessments question first. We're in this weird position, I'm sure many of you are too, we're having conversations with our superintendents about SLOs and measures of student performance. And you know, with the anticipation that the regents may or may not happen, I'm curious what kind of, you know, benchmark and student data you all are planning on using if the APPR still needs to have a student data progress component, or if you've even begun those conversations.
We've already done them at the high school at Lawrence, and for English, we mostly just did writing for the SLOs, and for social studies, we use CASA Learning.
And when you say was it like an old Regents exam, or how did you determine what measures to use?
Yeah, they were, you know, smaller assignments from old Regents exams.
that's more or less what we were thinking of doing too. I just wanted to know if anyone had another innovative thing. The other question I'd like to throw out, Jessica, if you don't mind, right now we're just dealing with an issue now, and mostly in our 3 to 5 buildings, of teachers really kind of feeling panicked about reading levels. So they just got their F&P scores back, and I've been trying to reassure people that, you know, this is to be expected. Students had interrupted education, but there's been a call for like some sort of an intervention program to use school-wide. And I just was curious if anyone is doing something specifically with foundational reading skills, like word work, that kind of stuff, at the upper elementary level that they found successful.
We're not doing anything drastically different than what we have right now. We are concerned about the lower levels. In the upper grades, we use words their way, which has been helpful right now, especially because of the online components that come with it. So our remote learners and our in-person learners, or if any classroom has to go to quarantine at any point and go remote, then it's a seamless transition. The only issue with words their way is that students can't actually do the assessments fully online. They can do the assessment online, but teachers still have to manually score it, which is a bit of a burden. But the lessons are all integrated, whether it's online or in person. And teachers typically group their students into 3 groups based on the results of the spelling inventory, so that they can access and direct the instruction specifically to the students' needs and levels. And they can also correlate that data. Donald Baer, who developed the program, you can correlate that data to F&P scores and reading rates, which help you kind of really target which students are truly students who are reading intervention students, or which students who are just typical because of the pandemic, who are lower. So that's the piece we're trying to kind of tease out right now, is when we're identifying students that need AIS, do they need AIS because it is a reading intervention need, or do they need, you know, everybody needs AIS right now because everyone's like a year below where they should be. But
It's reassuring at least to hear that we're not the only district that's feeling that strain. Good to know.
I think, yeah, the teachers are really panicked, and I know they're in process of trying to fill out report cards. So they're really trying to figure out, you know, when we use this data, like, are these students really ones because of their scores on their benchmark assessments, but really trying to go globally with it.
I've been having these conversations of, like, exactly as you say, Lisa, how are we going to get all these kids classified, and everyone needs EAS, and we're not going to do teachers college curriculum anymore. We have to just do, you know, foundations. But, you know, I think that's a consequence of some larger, you know, just setbacks that we're all encountering. So,
yeah.
Okay.
And I think like the ELA curriculum in the elementary level is so cyclical. Like, you know, it's not like they're never going to do text to text connections again, and, you know, and have all these, like, these ideas that comprehension focuses are going to, they come up every year. It's just a matter of on what level text you're doing that work. So that's been a challenge. And I think the big piece is the communication for parents, because, you know, as always, you know, if they are lower, then it's a concern, but it's a global concern because of what has happened as a reason why they're lower.
Our teachers noticed that too. So before moving into the next unit for their teachers college curriculum, they decided to dig back to the previous year. So specifically, we had a lot of conversation with our second graders. So they decided to go back to the first grade curriculum and specifically pull out lessons that they know that the skills that their kids were deficient in. And they were going to put those in prior to moving on to the next unit. So they kind of made that decision as a whole after looking at various data points.
Yeah, Bryce, I know you came in a little bit later, and there was a large discussion around AIS and how many of the districts have actually had to pull their AIS teachers to teach, you know, classroom sections. And so across the board, everybody is noticing that the scores are so much lower than they have been in the past. We have about 15 minutes left. Anything else that you'd like to throw out and share with the group? Okay, so my wait time's getting pretty good. I used to crack a lot earlier because you just sit here and you stare at your own face. Like, is anybody going to say anything? So I will take this moment, and I apologize to those of you that had to hear this twice today that were in our social studies meeting, but I do mean this from the bottom of my heart. We understand that you are going above and beyond for your teachers, for your students, in your own home lives. And we want to take a minute, Corinne and I, to just wholeheartedly thank you for everything that you're doing. And if you are not hearing it from anybody else, let us say it from the rooftops. We appreciate you. We appreciate everything that you're doing, and that you are here today to share your ideas with others and collaborate. And we are so grateful for everything that you're doing for your teachers and for your students. And if there is anything at all that we can do to support you, do not hesitate to reach out to us at all. If we don't have the answers, we will find somebody that can get you those answers. And just a huge thank you. Thank you for everything that you're doing. With that being said, I will stop recording.